Yeah, hi all of you. Good afternoon. Oh, sorry, good morning. I'm so used to my afternoon classes. निकलता automatically. Good morning, all of you. Online, offline. Can you all confirm if you can hear me, online students? Can you all confirm if you can hear me? Yes? Kirti, Vaibhav, Jatin, Rakhi, Jayesh, Pooja, Aishwarya. Okay, excellent. Ganesh, good morning, good morning. Not generalized, Anisha, it's generalists. Okay? Species, they can be generalists or they can be specialists. Generalists, they have a very broad range of living conditions. They have variety in food choices. They have got a high tolerance for range of factors. Okay. So they are found in many places. Generalists, Anisha, and specialists होते हैं who have very specific conditions in which they can grow or they can survive. A specialist will have low tolerance to conditions. Okay? So example is, think of an animal called as the giant panda. It can survive only in subtropical, tropical forests with bamboo. They eat bamboo. वैसे एक life form है called as koala bear. It can survive only on eucalyptus leaves. They're very specific. They can't survive everywhere. Generalists, they have got a very broad range. Okay, many of them are omnivores. They have a range of food. So it's about how they tolerate conditions, how they can survive. They have larger habitat. Okay, Anisha, did I answer your question? What are generalists and what are specialists? Ecotone is a sharp boundary. Ecocline is a broad range in the gradual transition. Ecotone species will be found in a narrower patch. Ecocline species are found in a broader patch. So this diagram, okay, if you can see this diagram here, say this is ecosystem 1. This is ecosystem 2. Okay, maybe this is a forest. Maybe this is some kind of a desert. Okay, so some species are found here, okay, and they become less. Some species are found here and they become less. Okay, these are the species of ecosystem 1. These are the species of ecosystem 2. Okay, so इस zone में, in this zone, you can find ecosystem 1 वाले भी and ecosystem 2 वाले भी. So when this is very broad and there's a gradual change, I call this as ecocline. जब ये बहुत narrow होगा, okay, say forest and desert के बीच में, we may have grasslands. ठीक है, so ecosystem, ecoclines, they are much more broader. They have a very gradual change in their type of conditions, whereas ecotones are more sharper. जैसे I give example yesterday, ये पानी है, water ends, the land starts, and you have got trees, you have got trees. So this is like an ecotone, this region here. Estuaries हैं, maybe mangrove forests हैं. Ecosystem structure means how is the ecosystem organized? कोई भी structure is arrangement. What is the structure of Indian political system? The president, the prime minister, the cabinet ministers, the council of ministers, the parliament, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, the state legislature. ये arrangement है of Indian political system. What is the structure of, okay, say Indian armed forces? Again, the president, then you might have those chief of commands, then you've got the generals, the admirals, you have got the next level. Okay, so this is the structure. Any structure का मतलब होता है arrangement. What is the human structure? Body structure क्या है? How is the body arranged? Nimish. Edge effect. Edge effect क्या है? Because of ecotones, I said ecotone में क्या होता है? Ecotone में you have more variety of life forms. Ecotones will have more packing, because of zone में you'll have more life forms there. So because of a fragmentation, because of ecotone formation, when the species variety increases and when the species density increases, we call that as edge effect. So the question we're discussing yesterday is edge effect bad or good? Are ecotones bad or good? We say if it is natural, that's perfectly good. Whatever is natural, say is dying bad or good? Natural hai, it's fine. The problem is unnatural deaths. So when ecotones are created because of human activities, because of some disruptions, because of some kind of ecosystem modifications, फिर उसमें जो ecotones होते हैं and the edge effect, that is one type of disruptions. So edge effect essentially is increase in species richness, increase in species diversity, increase in species density because of ecotone formations. That is edge effect. Piali answered your question. How birds are keystone species. Anything can be keystone species. Anything, okay, which impacts the working of ecosystem. So one difference I said is, what are umbrella species and what are keystone species. Umbrella species are primarily identified in terms of any species that requires a large area. So this is defined, these are defined on the basis of the range of the geographical area. This is a species that requires a very large area. It requires a very large habitat. It may or may not be critical for the habitat. It may or may not be the important one, the habitat. Okay, so it is all over the place, okay, moving, grazing, okay, predating, but it is not the most important. It may not be the most important. Whereas when I say keystone species, this is one of the most important it controls the functioning of the ecosystem. So if a keystone species dies, the ecosystem can collapse. We can have what we called as ecosystem cascade collapse. तो एक के बाद एक गिरना शुरू हो जाएगा. So your question, how can birds be ecosystem keystone species? I said anything can be ecosystem species. They can be large carnivores and predators. They can also be herbivores. They can also be birds. They can also be insects. So most of us have lived with the idea that keystone species are always large carnivores. Not necessarily. They're more common because they're apex. They eat life form 1. So they control life form 1. Because life form 1 gets controlled, life form 2 also gets controlled. Life form 3 also gets controlled. Okay, Anisha. So more commonly, these are the keystone species, the apex predators and the large carnivores. But I give examples where even herbivores, birds and insects can be keystone species. मैंने कहा ना यहाँ पर think of the pollinators, honeybees, think of hummingbirds, okay, think of elephants. So all of these can be keystone species. There's one wrong conception we have in general, that the keystone species always means large apex predators. Not necessarily. Population, biomass pyramid, both are herbivores types. क्या मतलब? What do you mean both are herbivore type का मतलब क्या है? Okay, pyramid में there are herbivores, there are carnivores, okay, there are producers, there are heterotrophs. Okay, I think you're talking about reversal of the pyramid. The reversal जब भी होता है when it is a grazing pyramid. Grazing implies you have herbivores then. I think that's what you're asking me, PLE. Because ecotone has more than one conditions, which is not natural in general. So when do introductory species come in? Because when the system changes, फिर नए species आ जाएंगे. So ecotone development में, it's a very unique type of condition, जो पहले नहीं था. And in this, some older life forms may not survive very well. That's why new ones come in. Kunal, a bit later, not now. Anybody offline, any doubts? कौन सा? Trees be keystone species. Yes, we have this tree called figs. Figs क्या? I don't know what you call it as. So yes, you're asking me, can figs be keystone species? Yes. If the figs or if the fruits or if the leaves or if some aspect of the tree or the plant is very critical to the entire ecosystem, absolutely yes. So can plants be keystone species? Yes. Okay, I was reading one example, the fig tree in some ecosystems, not everywhere. They can be keystone species, yes. Yes, possible. Okay, but then उसमें फिर what's called as a segregation होता है habitats में फिर, because they will compete. Okay, if they compete, say one ecosystem can have say insects and also hummingbirds, possible. But अगर predator होगा, okay, then they start competing. In that case, we have something called as ecosystem segregations हो जाते हैं. Okay, otherwise, in the fight, one of them will die. But can we have more than one? We can have, yes. Yes. Grazing is a cow grazing the field. So anything which is based on eating the producers. Okay, so whales, blue whales eat planktons. Planktons are producers. A deer eats the grasses. Grasses are the producers. जिसमें ये relationship है, we call that as grazing ecosystem. ठीक है? So herbivores and plants, this is the grazing ecosystem. Yes. कौन सा? Herbivores का मतलब है in the grazing system. Herbivores में ही उल्टा हो सकता है. where the biomass of the grass is less, but the biomass of the herbivores is more. So this relationship is called as the grazing ecosystem. Okay, the herbivore can be deer, elephants, or the herbivore can also be blue whales, aquatic systems or marine systems. Yes. So the word is grazing ecosystems, okay, can have reversals, both in case of population and also in case of, okay, the biomass. Yes. Sorry. No, because ecotones are narrower. Density का मतलब क्या है? The species divided by area is density. ठीक है? So broad कौन सा होता है? Ecocline. अगर ecocline broad होगा, density कम हो जाएगा. और ecotone का area narrow होता है, so higher density. Okay, so ecotones have higher densities compared to ecoclines. Anybody else offline? Yeah, some of you did not join me yesterday. We did some sessions related to ecosystems, trophic structure. We discussed a concept called as ecotones, what are keystone species, and so on. Anisha, what's that? The first principle of is trophic structure. Okay, so if this is the ecosystem, okay, structure of the pyramid, what it says is, as an organism occupies higher levels, as an organism occupies trophic levels away from the ये primary है, this is the level 1. जितना ऊपर जाओगे, okay, so the life form, say life form 1, life form 2. Life form 2 will have dependence on this and this. Life form 1 will have dependence on this, okay. So the dependence of a life form on the previous level, ये level 3 है. Level 3 depends on, और reverse कर देते हैं, ये 1 है, ये 2 है, ये 3 है, ये 4 है. Level 2 depends on 1. Level 3 depends on 2. And okay, sir, ये हमें 2 है. Level 4 depends on 3 and 2. As you go higher up, the dependence of a trophic level on the previous one becomes less. As you go higher up from the base trophic level, the dependence of the feeding habits में on the previous one becomes lesser. So this one here will not depend only on 4. It will depend on 4 and maybe 3 and even 2 maybe. But 2 will depend entirely on 1. Anisha, make sense? The exclusivity in the dependence on the previous level is relatively lesser. Okay. So that's about discussions of yesterday. I presume all of you have done your summary work, okay, which is the only work I'm recommending right now. Right? Okay, excellent. So let's continue now. So I'll give you some concepts of ecosystems. Okay. Other concepts of ecosystems. So I'm not teaching ecosystems comprehensively. Like I'm focusing on what I think can be asked to you. Okay, or exam में वही से पढ़ना है. Don't eat up ecosystem as a research paper. Some key terms पता होना चाहिए आपको. Okay, so the next topic I'm discussing is what is ecological niche. What is ecological? Niche. other concepts of ecosystem. What is the concept of ecological niche? Let me explain this. देखो niche का मतलब क्या है? English word, the gap in the wall where you keep anything is called as a niche. Let's say this is the wall here. If you have a wall and you have a small gap in the wall where you can keep maybe some artifacts, आपने कुछ statue रख दिया, आपने कुछ memento रख दिया, it's called as a niche. Niche is a word, इसका root है nest, खांचा, nest, okay. So essentially, if this is ecosystem, the ecosystem has these places where life forms can live. When I say places, I don't mean a geographical location. When I place, I mean, okay, an ecosystem position. जैसे इस classroom में, I have a niche, I have a position. I stand here and teach. In the classroom, okay, if there is an air conditioner, which is a living thing, for example, उसका भी एक position है. It can only be at some height or some location. In a classroom, there's a fan. If it's a living thing, okay, the fan has a position. So the ecological niche का मतलब क्या है? It is a position of a living thing, okay, in an ecosystem. Okay, वो कहाँ रहता है? What does it do? What role it performs? What is its importance? So ecological niche kind of defines what living things perform in an ecosystem. Okay, write down 2 lines here. Ecological niche. Ecological niche is the set of conditions. Ecological niche is the set of conditions, okay, that make an organism or a life form, respond, act and behave, that make a life form respond, act and behave in a certain way. Ecological niche, therefore is that aspect of an ecosystem, that allows for a living organism, to perform its role and be part of the ecosystem functioning. ठीक है? So आपको ना 3-4 वर्ड ध्यान रखो. When I said that ecological niche है क्या? It is a set of conditions. When I say conditions, I mean temperature as a condition. I mean moisture as a condition. Okay. I could mean the food availability is also the condition. When it's a condition, the sunlight can be the condition. So what is ecological niche? Ecological niche is the set of conditions. Okay. And these conditions can also be biological conditions in terms of how 2 life forms interact. Okay. So they are conditions. That's number 1. Number 2, ये conditions करता क्या है? These conditions make the organism perform its role. Okay. So there is an earthworm that live in conditions of soils, and the earthworm has a role in how it churns the soils. There's a honeybee, okay. It lives in conditions where we have got flowers, and the honeybee performs the role of pollination, right? So we have mangrove forests. They live in conditions where there is salt water and fresh water along the coast existing, and the mangrove forest perform the role of absorbing some pollutants, maybe absorbing some nitrates or phosphates. So हर organism का एक role है. Okay, so this room has some conditions that allows me to perform a role of teaching. Okay, so niche है क्या? Niche is set of conditions. Niche allows for the organism to perform its role. And third, very important, it is this that makes ecosystem working possible. Okay? Whatever ecosystem क्या क्या working होता है? Ecosystem working can include some type of water cycling. Ecosystem working can include life forms are multiplying, growing, productivity. It can include the role called as nitrogen fixation. Okay, so without this, the life form cannot do its role, and life form cannot do its role, the ecosystem working will get compromised. And ultimately, these three things together is what makes an ecosystem stable. Okay, मैं कल बताया था आपको, ecosystem has that capability of self-regulation. Ecosystems has the capability of equilibrium and balance. So when I say it is stable, का मतलब कि ecosystems have their equilibrium. Ecosystems have their stability. They're capable of self-regulation. They're capable of self-correction. Okay, इसीलिए possible है because ecosystem has ecological niche. So in ecosystems, this is one of the most important aspects of ecosystem. When I say don't cut trees, when I say let's preserve animals, when we say let's promote the idea of coastline or wetland conservation, हम करना क्या चाह रहे हैं? Essentially, preserve ecosystem so that ecosystem can do what it does, and preserve ecosystem मतलब होता है preserve ecological niche. So any ecosystem conservation fundamentally is conserve the niche. So conditions को change मत करो. If it has water, preserve the water. If it has tiger, preserve the tiger. If it has some kind of wetland condition, marshes, preserve the marshes. Because without this, none of this is possible. Okay, so there are two lines on this. Write down. Write down that ecological niche is one of the most fundamental concepts. Is one of the most fundamental concepts. Okay, in a species distribution. In species distribution. In how ecosystems operate, that ultimately makes Earth's life support systems operate. It makes Earth's life support systems operate. Any conservation strategy of environment, or any conservation strategy of ecosystems, like habitat conservation, wildlife conservation, afforestation, ecosystems restoration is about conserving and preserving. The ecological niche. Conserving and preserving ecological niche. I hope you got the concept, all of you here. So niche is what defines entire ecosystem. Like if I ask, in a political system, what is the most important thing? If you do that, everything is fine then. The focus of everything, governance, laws, rules, economy, development, वो क्या चीज हम उठा रहे हैं? If I target that, बाकी सब होना ही होना है. Essentially, we want to ensure people get their rights. That's all. Right to food, education, your dignity, your survival, your right to pursue your ambitions. Okay, अगर rights पे आप ध्यान दे दो, okay, बाकी सब उसी में ultimately fit हो जाता है. Any governance is about rights. Any growth is about expanding your choices. So वैसे ही all story of ecosystem fundamentally is, what are we doing with ecological niche? Human activities destroy the niche. Okay, human activities modify the niche. Okay, when we have life forms dying, the ecological niche gets vacated. Okay, there was an animal living in some conditions, doing something. आपने क्या किया? Animal को मार दिया. So जो conditions में animal था, that ultimately will get destroyed. Okay, so three things here. Ecological niche are the set of conditions in an ecosystem. Number two, ecological niche, okay, is the consequence of life forms adapting to the geographical conditions. Ultimately, whatever a life form does, वो क्यों कर रहा है? Because the life form is trying to adjust and adapt. Okay, water है, I can't fly, I must swim under the water, I'm adapting to water conditions. So whatever a life form does is actually part of how is adapting to the geographical conditions. So जो niche है, वो conditions है. Niche is what forces life forms to adapt, और ये करते करते the life form performs roles. Okay, and because of this, okay, a life form also modifies the geographical conditions. Ecological niche में ये तीनों चीज included है. Ecological niche includes the geographical conditions. Ecological niche includes how a life form adapts, okay, how a life form adjusts. It also includes what a life form does, okay, to modify the geographical conditions. Life forms also modify the geographical conditions. And we talked about the role of beaver, right? What does the beaver do? It eats the tree, it fells the tree, and the tree dams the ecosystem, making marshes and wetlands. Okay, what does a tiger do? Okay, tiger probably hunts the deer. In the process, encourages more grass to grow. Okay, so when I'm saying ecological niches, conditions, and organism does the role, ये role है क्या? The role is how it adjusts, and the role is how it modifies. ठीक है? So अगर आपने, if you have taken care of ecological niche, you have taken care of all of this. Okay, the conditions are there, the animal adjusts, the animal modifies. This is what ultimately makes ecosystems work, and this is what ultimately makes the ecosystems stable. All fine, all of you here? ये वाला, ecosystems, how they maintain their functioning, how the ecosystems maintain their operations. It makes ecosystems working possible. It makes ecosystems working possible. Okay? So now in ecosystems language we say that human activities that result in a habitat destruction, human activities that result in ecosystems modifications or destructions. Human activities that result in habitat destruction, that result in ecosystems modification and destruction, okay, fundamentally are destruction of ecological niche. They are fundamentally destruction of ecological niche. So what does man do? Man destroys natural ecological niche. हमने अगर फॉरेस्ट काट दिया, हमने फिर कंडीशंस को मॉडिफाई कर दिया. I have destroyed some niche. Because I've destroyed niche, the life form cannot do its role. It cannot do the role, the ecosystem working gets compromised. And fundamentally, the ecosystem becomes unstable. I said, no, in ecosystems language, ये important terms हैं. Okay, how does man impact ecotones? How does man impact some of the species and the roles like keystone species? How does man impact the destruction of natural ecological niche? Okay, तो आप जो भी environment conservation करते हो, your fundamental objective is let us not destroy the ecological niche. Fine here? And now one more thing. So I'm linking with ecological niche. What does species extinction do? What does species extinction do? Okay, or loss of, जो consequences बात कर रहे हैं, what does species extinction do? What does the loss of biodiversity do? करता क्या है ये? Okay, in the language of ecological niche we say the loss of biodiversity vacates. It vacates ecological niche. Okay, वो condition में जो life form होना चाहिए था वो अब नहीं है, वो condition खाली हो गया. What does extinction do? What does loss of biodiversity do? It essentially vacates ecological niche. अगर vacate होगा तो क्या होगा? Okay, the role will not be performed. Okay, and therefore the ecosystem role is not performed, and therefore ecosystems functioning is impaired. Okay, so what does extinction do? What does loss of biodiversity do? It vacates ecological niche. खाली कर देता है. Okay, I have rivers, I have the water, but there are no fishes. So the river niche has been vacated. I have a forest, I have got conditions, I have got no tiger. So वो खाली हो गया condition. इसमें होना चाहिए था tiger. Okay, there are flowers, agriculture, there are no honeybees. I vacated the niche. खाली कर दिया. Because it's vacated, some role will not be performed. The role gets underperformed, and that impacts ecosystems working. Okay. Similarly, on the other side, what does overpopulation do? What does overpopulation do? Okay, the ecological niche gets crowded. Okay, the ecological niche gets crowded. And the rule is, okay, one ecological niche can only be occupied by one unique life form. The same niche can't be occupied by two people, okay, or two organisms. So when we have got overcrowding, okay, what is happening is the ecological niche gets crowded when you have got more population. So the rule is what? Okay, every ecological niche, every ecological niche can be occupied by only one and unique life form. Occupied by one and the unique life form. So imagine I have got a classroom. Okay, say there are say 6 chairs. There's a teacher. So this classroom has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ecological niche. Okay, इस niche में there can only be one teacher. There can only be one student in the chair number 1. There can only be one student in chair number 2. Only one student in chair number 3. Okay, so when you remove the student, आपने niche को खाली कर दिया. But if there are 7 students, मतलब क्या है? In any one chair, 2 must come in here now. This is not allowed ecosystems. The ecological niche can only be occupied by one organism. So when you have got crowding, the consequent crowd क्या होगा? Okay, they will fight. Okay, one has to leave the room, or one must die here, or one must find a new role for itself. क्या मैं पढ़ाई नहीं करूंगा, सर यहाँ बैठ के मैं अब मैं अपना रीडिंग करूंगा. So when you have got crowding, when you have got more than 2 life forms, the consequence will be the one life form has to evolve into some other life form. It can't live there. So if there are 2 life forms eating the same grass, then one life form has to change, maybe start eating fruits. If it cannot do that, it must leave. कोई और काम नहीं कर पाओगे तो जाओ. It's called as competitive exclusion. Okay, it will be pushed out. Or if it stays here, they will fight and one has to die. So the adaptation and evolution, or what's called as extinction, or what's called as competitive exclusion. You have to move out from the habitat. So if there's overpopulation, the ecological niches get crowded. And the rule is every niche can be occupied only by one unique life form. Okay. Therefore, the consequence will be what? Will be competition. Will be competition between the life forms. Okay. And in this competition, 3 ही चीज हो सकता है. Either you adapt and evolve and develop new feeding habits, or you have to get physically excluded. You have to move out, excluded. Okay, you have to migrate out, or one form of exclusion is you have to go extinct. I don't know if this theory works or not, but there are reasons. Do you know about something called as Neanderthal man? Okay, and Homo sapiens sapiens? About 50,000-70,000 years ago, these 2 species are known to have cohabited. Okay, they were living together. They also have examples of where they may have co-bred also. But then ultimately Neanderthals have gone extinct. And one reason is Neanderthals and human beings, Homo sapien, they occupy the same ecological niche. Okay, and both of them could not have survived if one of them did not evolve. And evolution is a very slow process. It takes millions of years to evolve. Jhagda hua hoga, fight hua hoga, and Homo sapiens being the smarter ones, not the physically stronger ones. Stronger ones were Neanderthals. Smarter ones, we kind of outwitted them maybe. And ultimately, they went extinct. So when there's overcrowding, when there is more of something, ultimately lead to some kind of ecosystem imbalances. Do you all get the angle of what I mean by writing ecosystem language? What I mean by writing ecosystem-based keywords, and use them in your answers, whatever way you can. Okay, so I said, we can either have we can either have ecosystems niche getting vacated, or we can have ecosystem niche getting overcrowded. Okay? And this overcrowding mein, these are some of the consequences. We need to have adaptation, evolution, or you can get physically excluded, or you can go extinct. Acha. Now, iska example kya hai? There's something called as climate velocity. Okay, listen to this, I'll explain what I mean by this. Say, this is some land, and this is the mountain. Ye plains hai. Somewhere here, the mountain ecosystem starts. In the mountain ecosystems, we have snow leopards. Okay. Down in the plains, marshes, okay, we have tigers. Okay. Now we have got habitat destruction. Now we have global warming. It's hotter than what tigers can survive and manage. So tigers, because of destruction here, yahan par ecological niche khatam ho raha hai. Okay. So tiger will start moving up. They start moving up. It becomes warmer. They start moving up. Now, in the mountain ecosystems, okay, there's a fixed ecological niche. Now, snow leopards are living here already, and the tiger has come into this now. Ab kya hoga? There'll be snow leopard and tiger ka competition now. So, this niche wala discussion comes from this current affairs. So, when the tigers move in here, up snow leopard and tigers will have competition. Isme ek possibility is tiger is the most stronger one. Okay. The snow leopard must move out. It will move into higher reaches. And tiger has come here. Or the snow leopard must evolve. Ab evolve to nahi kar payega in 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Or in the fight, the snow leopard gets hunted. It will die ultimately. So the rate at which a species moves out into new ecosystems because of climate change is called as climatic velocity. Kitne fast ye move kar rahe hain. Okay. So it can apply for plants, it can apply for tigers, it can apply for birds. The rate at which, okay, I'll dictate, wait. Did you all get the idea, all of you here? Okay. Yes, this is what's called as the competitive exclusion. They fight and they get excluded. Okay, now write down. The concept of, maybe give a heading, ecological niche, and competitive exclusion, ecological niche and competitive exclusion in conditions of climate change. In conditions of climate change. Trichi is asking me, sir, tiger can survive in cold conditions. But global warming ho gaya. ठीक है, ये जो cold था, अब वो pleasant हो गया यहाँ वाला. Okay, and the tiger has come here. It's not that this is having snowfall and big time glaciers here. When global warming happens, this was warm, this was cold. Now the warm becomes very hot, the cold becomes warm. Okay, and the tiger enters here. ठीक है? Okay, write down. Climate change has led to habitat destruction. Climate change has led to habitat destruction. कैसे? Submergence of land, forest fires, submergence of land, forest fires, heat waves, okay, etc. So there is a habitat destruction here. Okay. Life forms are forced to migrate out. Life forms are forced to migrate out and occupy relatively cooler geographical conditions. The rate at which life forms move out, is called as climatic velocity. The rate at which life forms move out is called as climatic velocity. Next. When life forms move into relatively less warm conditions, they come in competition with the local native species. They come in competition with the local native species. Which can lead to animal-animal conflicts, competitive exclusion, and eventually long-term extinctions. Okay. Such modifications because of altering ecological niche. Can be seen in tigers moving up the Himalayan slopes. Can be seen in tigers moving up the Himalayan slopes. Number 2, coral ecosystems are shifting towards temperate waters. Coral ecosystems shifting towards temperate waters. Third, macroalgal blooms. Macroalgal, ALGAL, algal blooms and macroalgal regime shifts. Macroalgal blooms and macroalgal regime shifts. Okay. So these two words are related to marine ecosystems. What happens is, this is the marine waters. This is some ecosystem where some type of algae lives, some type of plants live. Okay. When the conditions change, now what happens is, some new type of algae comes in. And it starts growing very fast. Okay. So this is that algal regime. The algal regime, जो पहले black dots था, अब shift होके, it has now become the orange one. Okay. So, and when it starts coming here, it starts growing very, very fast, because maybe in this water, there is a life form called X that feeds on this. But इस water में ये X है नहीं. So what happens is, when the orange one comes here, there's nothing feeding on it. It starts growing very rapidly. We call that as macroalgal blooms. Bloom means a rapid growth हो रहा है. Okay. This is one type of ecosystems disruptions happening. Okay. These two terms are linked to coral reefs. They are linked to coral reefs. Coral reefs, if you know, corals live with some kind of algae. Okay. So there is a coral living with algae 1. But अब क्या है? because conditions are changing, the algae 1 is dying and algae 2 is coming inside here. This is called as algal regime shift. And A2 grows so fast, it kills the coral itself. Okay, so some details I'll teach you while discussing geographical concepts of GS and optional. Abhi bas ye terms jano. So one example of this ecological niche destruction impact is macroalgal blooms. Okay, where some type of algae, they start proliferating very fast. Okay, rapid growth of, this is a rapid growth of some type of algae. A red algal bloom बहुत common होता है. Okay, and when the original one gets replaced by a new one, it's called as algal regime shift. Yes, these algal blooms can destroy many other life forms in that ecosystem. Okay, the examples of ecological niche ka disruptions kya hai? When I said we have got migrations of some life forms into new ecosystems, a tiger into the mountains. Macroalgal blooms are one example. And third examples are, okay, the rapid growth of invasive species. The rapid growth of invasive alien species. Invasive alien species. All fine here? Can I move on? All done? So what is ecological niche? What is its concept? Ecological niche ultimately hai kya? So I remember a very nice analogy. It says that ecological niche समझने के लिए, it is essentially the conditions in which an organism lives and an organism works. Okay, organism lives, it is the residence. Organism works, it is its occupation. So ecological niche defines the residence of an organism and also its occupation. What does it do and where it lives? What role it performs, where it resides. They together become ecological niche. Just to help you understand the analogy here. The niche is the conditions in which organism lives, the conditions in which the organism works, its residence and its occupation. Okay? Can I move on now? Okay. So that's one concept. The next concept is, let me take up, ecosystem working mein, what are biogeochemical cycles? The second concept is, ecosystems working. The concept of biogeochemical cycles. The concept of biogeochemical cycles. Okay. Right. Now see, when ecosystems are working, any working is linked to something is moving. What can move? Two things can move. Matter can move and energy can move. Okay. Any relationship, if there is a relationship between you and your mother, you and your father, you and your friend, it's always something is exchanged. Relationship of India with Maldives, India with US, US with Russia, जो भी relationship, it's always because of something is moving. And while discussing, I said yesterday that ecosystem का एक बहुत important aspect है the interactions. Okay, and ecosystem essentially is about interactions. How are things linked to one another? So any link is the consequence of some material is moving. Water moving, gases are moving, maybe traffic is moving, trades is happening, investments is moving, some matter is moving. Second is energy also moves. Whenever matter moves, energy moves. Now what we realize is that in ecosystems, this matter energy का एक pathway है, वो random नहीं है. Like I said, herbivores eat, okay, the grasses. The carnivore 1 eats the herbivore. The carnivore 2 eats the carnivore 1 and maybe also some herbivores. There's a pathway in how energy moves. There's a pathway in how material moves. That movement has a cyclical thing. Okay, it moves, it shifts, new components, again comes back. It again moves, it shifts, okay, new components, again comes back. So ecosystems का ये बहुत important part है. So I'm talking about same concept of ecosystem stability in one more language now. पहले मैंने क्या बताया? Ecosystem stability in terms of how ecological niche must be maintained. ये एक और concept है. Like ecosystem stability in terms of how the cycles are being maintained. ठीक है? So 2 points here. First point later down. An ecosystem is fundamentally defined by. An ecosystem is fundamentally defined by interactions and flows between components. Interactions and flows between components. And the flow systems comprise matter and energy. The flow systems comprise matter, the flow systems comprise energy. Right? Next head down. The flow systems have a definite pathway. The flow systems have a definite pathway in which matter and energy moves through components. ठीक है? The depiction of such movement is in the form of cycles. One question to all of you. So ये cycle concept है, किस पे लागू होता है? Matter पे या energy पे या दोनों पे? This idea of cycles is applied or relevant for what? It's applied for matter or for energy or for both? Okay. Now here is the catch. Earth is not the fundamental source of energy. Source क्या energy का क्या है? Sun है. Okay. And energy is something that can only move in one direction. Okay. Energy उल्टा नहीं आ सकता. So at a macro level, energy comes from the sun, enters the earth, does some work, and energy goes out. This might look like a cycle, but that is not how we study. Okay. So the cycle concept is fundamentally for matter. Water can cycle. Okay. Carbon can cycle. Or nitrogen can cycle. The word cycle, although at a macro level, I can apply even for the energy. But for energy, I must account for energy moving beyond the ecosystem boundaries. Okay. So Earth atmospheric system hai. The sun shining, it enters through the boundary, does some work, and energy release hoke, it escapes out of the boundary. I am seeing ecosystem as Earth atmosphere or some local scale. इस scale के अंदर में we don't see energy as being cycled. Energy is one-way pathway, ultimately will leave the ecosystem. Okay? So I said macro level pe, while energy also gets cycled, but that is not how ecosystems are studied. So at the ecosystem scale, it's fundamentally matter cycling. Okay? Right on this point here. The concept of ecosystems cycles is more relevant for material and matter. Is more relevant for material and matter. Because ecosystems are studied, in reference to boundaries. Because ecosystems are studied in reference to boundaries. And energy can cross boundaries. And energy can cross boundaries. I hope you got the idea here. Ultimately, everything is cycled. At a universe level, energy also gets cycled. But talking about a lake ecosystem, a forest ecosystem, a swamp ecosystem, a river ecosystem, उस scale में energy cycling is difficult to get captured. In that case, energy बाहर से ही आ रहा है और energy बाहर जा रहा है. That's why the biogeochemical cycles are fundamentally cycles of matter and material. इसे हमने कहा biological cycling. Okay, chemical is your some compounds, and biogeo, some aspects of the earth, which includes water cycle, which includes rock cycles or sedimentary cycles. Okay, so they all are matter and material. ठीक है? अब cycles बहुत सारे हैं. Just to name a few cycles, we have got rock cycles, we have hydrological cycles, water cycling, okay, and we have gaseous cycles. हम सारा नहीं पढ़ेंगे, okay? Gaseous cycle में भी you have got a range of, okay. So I'll focus primarily on nitrogen cycle. ये important है for ecosystems, okay. Carbon cycle not much talk about, and as a part of sedimentary cycles we have phosphorus. So I'm focusing on nitrogen and phosphorus cycles. But you also have carbon cycle, you also have a sulfur cycle, and so on. Okay, I said now I'm focusing more on what I think can be asked to you. The tricky part is what I'm taking up. Okay, so I'm starting with nitrogen cycling. Nitrogen cycle. Now what I want, I have taken up one of the diagrams from the internet. Okay, I'll teach you on this, then you can also draw this. Is it visible to all of you? Online students, is it visible all of you? Okay. So you need to know this. Okay. So fundamentally, nitrogen आता कहाँ से? Nitrogen का biggest source and sink is the atmosphere. Okay. 98% is nitrogen in the atmospheric composition. And lot of nitrogen in the atmosphere comes from volcanoes. Volcanic eruptions are the fundamental source of all nitrogen. Happened over millions and millions of years ago. Okay. Just a minute. Is this fine now? Online, is it fine now? Yeah, okay. So we have got the main source, okay, is the atmosphere, atmospheric nitrogen. और ये भी कहां से आता है? Over years of, okay, volcanic eruptions. Then this nitrogen, because of lightning, okay, there's lightning where nitrogen oxygen can combine together, nitrogen oxide compounds are formed, it rains down, okay, it forms some kind of weak acids, and that gets trapped by nitrogen fixing bacteria, okay, and the trapping hota hai in the form of ammonia. This is called as nitrogen fixation. ये बहुत important step है. The fixation is done by some type of bacteria, okay. Then what happens is, protein, all living things have protein, okay. Protein ka very important constituent is again ammonia and, okay, nitrogen again. So nitrogen in plants, nitrogen in animals, in the trees. So when they die, okay, this nitrogen again moves in, and some decomposers, they perform the role of ammonification. इसमें क्या होता है? You have got the ammonium radical, NH4 plus radical. There is ammonification, again converts into ammonia. The source of nitrogen क्या है? Atmosphere. So one atmosphere nitrogen comes into the soil. It is, okay, one type of trapping. The living things have proteins, they die, the decomposition, that creates again ammonia. Then this ammonia breaks down reactions ke saath mein, because again some bacteria, a process takes place called as nitrification. Nitrification ke do steps hain. It converts into nitrites, NO2 compounds, and then converts into NO3 compounds. Okay, so it is nitrogen fixation, converts into some kind of ammonia. Okay, nitrogen from animals again becomes ammonia. It undergoes nitrification. Nitrification, first nitrites, NO2, then NO3. Okay, now NO3 jo hai, this is the only form in which again, okay, plants can use. So plants, they again take nitrogen back only as nitrates, NO3 nitrates. So nitrates say you have got a process called as assimilation. Okay, they absorb. Plants are eaten by herbivores. Herbivores are eaten by carnivores. It enters the life forms of the trophic structure. And some nitrates, because of bacteria, can again break up and enter the atmosphere directly as nitrogen. We call that as denitrification. So I repeat, there is nitrogen fixation, there is ammonification from the dead living things, becomes ammonia. From ammonia we have nitrification, nitrites and nitrates. Important catch is, nitrate is the only form in which, okay, it is used by living things, by plants and trees. We call that assimilation. Okay, and ultimately you're releasing it into the atmosphere. Okay, again bacteria can break this up. Human activities क्या करते हैं? Human activities, when they burn fossil fuel, okay, उसमें भी होता है some amount of nitrogen. The fossil fuel burning can release nitrogen compounds. Okay, so I can add nitrogen compounds from industries, from vehicles. Using fertilizers, I am putting nitrates, okay, ammonium compounds, which again can be used by the plants. So these two components are the components where man is impacting the nitrogen cycle. We say man is adding reactive nitrogen, which ultimately becomes a part of the larger nitrogen cycle. Make sense all of you here? So in this you must remember what life form is doing what, and the sequence of the events. Sequence is lightning, sequence is, okay, nitrogen fixation, the sequence is, okay, ammonification, and ammonia formation. The sequence is nitrification, assimilation, and you have denitrification. I hope you have got the terms, all of you. If you can spend maybe some time drawing this, if you all can see this, please do it. Draw this diagram, all of you. Yeah, it's fairly visible, I believe, for all of you. Liklo, otherwise I'll tell you if you can't read something. Whatever you can see, you first draw this. Denitrification is the bacteria directly breaking the nitrates into nitrogen and releasing into atmosphere. Samiksha. So nitrates directly breaking into nitrogen and getting released. So from nitrates, either plants can absorb or it gets released into atmosphere. This is called as denitrification and this is called as assimilation. You need not draw artistic trees and volcanoes. एक idea तो कर ही सकते हैं. अब बना लो, then I'll try something from my side. If you all are on the Edukemy channel on geography environment, I have posted some articles yesterday based on what I taught you. I taught you surrogate conservation. We discussed something on keystone species. So मैंने कुछ articles डाला हुआ है. So back home, and I'll do the same thing today also. What I'm teaching you, I'll put some articles for your reference. Okay, I'll mention that. Wait. First, draw the sketch. One of you met me yesterday. Sir, I don't have science background. How will I manage this? एक तो ये कहना बंद करो, science background नहीं है. Class 10th पास की हो तो science पढ़ा हुआ है. Right? Don't convince yourself that you do not know science. Second, be patient. करते रहो, हो जाएगा. क्या था मतलब? Assimilation is essentially absorption of nitrates by the plants. Okay. So from here, the plants, the roots, they absorb it back. Again, these plants, they die or they release, decomposer, ammonification. That's how the cycle gets maintained. Yes, this is a mistake. It should have been nitrates. You're right. Okay. N-I-T-R-A, nitrates. NO3 is nitrates. NO2 is nitrite. No. This process is nitrogen fixation. In the fixation, the bacteria converts into ammonia. One, ये डायरेक्ट होगा. और यहां पर क्या है? It converts into ammonium compounds first, NH4 plus, and यहां से बनेगा ammonia. The ammonification is not a part of this one. This is called as nitrogen fixing. From decomposers is called as ammonification. याद है बरगा. All good? Okay. So back to your notes now. Back to your notes. So what are the stages? What are the stages in the nitrogen cycle? Okay. The first is nitrogen fixation. This forms ammonia, and we have nitrogen from the dead converted into ammonia by ammonification. ये दो जो है, they are the source of nitrogen in the soils. Nitrogen fixation into ammonia. This is bacteria trapping nitrogen from the atmospheric nitrogen. It's called as nitrogen fixation. Bacteria trapping nitrogen from atmosphere plus nitrogen from the dead. Okay. This converts into ammonia, ammonium, and then into ammonia. NH3 is ammonia. NH3 is ammonia. It's a compound. NH4 plus is the radical, ammonium radical. So nitrogen fixation and ammonification, these are the two sources for nitrogen in the soil. The two sources of nitrogen in the soil. ठीक है? Third, whatever source of ammonia जो भी हो, ammonia converts into nitrites, converts into nitrates, nitrites and nitrates. This is called as nitrification. This is nitrification. इसमें क्या होता है? The nitrogen converts into usable form. First you trap, then nitrate is the usable form. और यूज करने वाले सिर्फ प्लांट्स ही होते हैं डायरेक्टली. यूजेबल फॉर्म. ठीक है? लिखा आपने नाइट्रेट्स एंड नाइट्राइट्स. NITRI, nitrites, NITRA, nitrates. NO2 radical is, तो ये स्टेज है बस, इसको भूल भी सकते हो आप, नो वरीज. ओके, सो अमोनिया से नाइट्राइट, उसके बाद नाइट्रेट्स. You can also skip this part. So ammonia converts in nitrates. Nitrate is the usable form of nitrogen for the plants. Okay. The fourth is, once nitrates are formed, इसका दो ही हो सकता है. Once they are formed, nitrates are formed, they either get assimilated by the plants, or there is denitrification and a release of nitrogen into atmosphere. The assimilation by plants. Plants can absorb nitrogen, HNO3. Yes, yes. -1, correct. HNO3. ये भी 1 होगा. Yes, HNO3, correct. H2SO4 and HNO3, correct. Valency 1. Okay, so I'm saying these nitrates, they get absorbed by the plants, okay, and the nitrates can undergo denitrification and it gets released into the atmosphere. So क्या step रहा आपके पास? You have got fixation, you have got ammonification, you have got nitrification, you have got assimilation, denitrification. Are आपको 5 terms? That's all you need, nothing else. And they might ask you, sequence बताओ कौन सा पहले होता है. ठीक है? So I repeat, what are the terms? Fixation, nitrogen fixation, and ammonification, they can happen together. Then you have got nitrification, ammonia से nitrates. Once nitrification, it either becomes assimilation plants के लिए, or it becomes denitrification, okay, into the atmosphere directly. You have to know these terms, that's all. Acha. Next. Man's impact on the nitrogen cycle. ये important है, okay, part of current affairs applied aspect. What is man's impact, okay, on man's impact on the nitrogen cycle? So man is altering, sorry, क्या लिखा? Denitrification and release of nitrogen into atmosphere. Denitrification and the release of nitrogen into atmosphere. ठीक है? So impact of man क्या है? Okay, human activities have disrupted nitrogen cycle. Human activities have disrupted nitrogen cycle. Next point. In some areas, there is excess nitrogen. In some areas, there is excess nitrogen that builds up into aquatic systems and on the soil. That builds up into aquatic systems and in the soil. And in some places, there is less nitrogen. In some places, there is net less nitrogen. Okay, next point. Man releases nitrogen oxide compounds. Man releases nitrogen oxide compounds. एक जेनरिक टर्म यूज करते हैं, NOx. ये बहुत यूज होगा आगे जाकर. Okay, NOx is the range of NO, NO2, N2O, NO3, all of them together it added NOx, nitrogen oxide compound, NOx. Man releases NOx in fossil fuel burning. In fossil fuel burning. Okay, industrial emissions, vehicular emissions. Okay, so what happens is we have more of atmospheric nitrogen ultimately. Okay, that's one. Second is, okay, agriculture systems have seen, next is agriculture systems have seen, okay, addition of nitrate fertilizers, nitrate and ammonium or ammonia fertilizers. Addition of nitrate fertilizers and ammonium fertilizers. The most common being urea. Like urea is one of the most common nitrogenous fertilizers. Okay, that's why the diagram shows. Yeah, okay? The diagram shows you add nitrates or you're releasing. Okay, next slide down. Next slide down. Human activities, okay, have added more reactive nitrogen. That has climate change consequences. And problems of land and water pollution. Okay, so a release of NOx in the atmosphere. This can add to pollutants. It can cause smogs. It can cause global warming. When you add NOx in the atmosphere, it can be pollutants. Okay, it can cause smogs. It can also cause global warming. They also are capable of absorbing heat. And more nitrates and ammonia fertilizers, what they do is they cause pollution, and a special type of pollution called as eutrophication. Eutrophication, E-U-T-R-O-P-H-I, eutrophication. Okay. What is eutrophication? Essentially is enriching water bodies with nitrates and with phosphorus compounds that results in okay, crowding and death of aquatic ecosystems. Eutrophication is enriching the waters, okay, with nitrogen compounds and with phosphates, nitrates and phosphates, dono. Okay, and both of them can result in crowding. More life forms are there, crowding, and eventually death of the aquatic ecosystems. Lakes में, marshes में, coastal areas, rivers, it's a major problem, eutrophication. So that's one. Next slide down. Overall, next point, overall, at a global scale, nitrogen availability okay, for plant growth and agriculture is declining. Nitrogen availability for plant growth and for agriculture is declining. So what I'm saying is, कहीं पर बढ़ रहा है, कहीं पे घट रहा है, right? जहां बढ़ रहा है, I have got eutrophication. जहां घट रहा है is less, कुछ और problems होते हैं. But if you look at the whole world at large, we say there is more and more nitrogen deficiency. By the way, I'm assuming you know this. Why do you need nitrogen? Nitrogen is a fundamental component of all proteins. And proteins are required for growth. Okay, more in nutrition. Add kar lo somewhere, put a star mark and add down. The nitrogen is the fundamental element in proteins. It is fundamental element in the proteins. And proteins are building blocks. for growth. Proteins are building blocks for growth. So world over, nitrogen is becoming more and more less. Okay, if I look at the global scale. Now one question to all of you is, tell me, how does global warming, how is it linked to nitrogen issues? Anybody can tell me? ये क्या linkage क्या है? Global warming, of course, one is nitrogen oxide compounds can also cause global warming. That's one aspect. दूसरा क्या है? How does global warming make nitrogen more or less? Anybody knows? Anybody knows this? Okay, let's look at this one. And this is where the question lies. Say, the atmosphere. This is the land here. So, human activities, they release nitrogen. Okay, so we are releasing NOx. NOx from vehicles, NOx from industries. And this NOx, what it does is, it can cause pollution, it can cause global warming. And one type of pollution is smogs. Okay? Okay. Now, because of this, plus maybe more carbon dioxide and other things, ये सब मिला के क्या हो रहा है? It's leading to global warming, it's leading to more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So when you've got more carbon dioxide, what will happen to the plants? Will they grow more or grow less? When you've got more carbon dioxide, क्या होने वाला है? You'll have more growth of plants. Okay, more carbon dioxide, more forests because they can take more carbon dioxide. It's something called as carbon fertilization. Okay, when you've got more carbon dioxide, okay, the plants can perform more photosynthesis. So they can grow more dense. When you've got more plants, okay, the nitrates of the soil will be absorbed more, Ultimately, क्या होगा? The soil gets depleted. Nitrates are used more. So, more global warming, more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it causes carbon fertilization, dense forest, more absorption of nitrates. Okay. Therefore, ultimately what happens is the nitrates start declining. When they start declining, you have got less nitrates for the plants and less nitrates for the grasses also. Okay. So when you have got agriculture, अब nitrates कम है आपके पास में. ठीक है? So this whole process, ये जो activity है, with more carbon dioxide, the final consequence is you have got less amount of nitrates for the plants to absorb. Is it okay all of you here? So आपका link क्या है? More CO2, carbon fertilization, more absorption, less nitrates. Now this starts impacting the agriculture systems. So across the world, the productivity of agriculture has declined. The plants, they are not as rich in nutrients anymore. The animals, they also lack nitrogen compounds in their body now. The protein formation has become more and more lesser. In one sentence, write down. Higher carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere, higher carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere okay, we also call this as enhanced CO2. Also called as enhanced CO2. कितना होना, any idea कितना होना चाहिए in the atmosphere? How much we should have? How much we should have? In terms of ppm, about 200, 250 ppm of CO2 we should have. कितना है? Is more than 480. Okay, almost double CO2 है. Okay, in terms of ppm, parts per million, the amount of CO2 natural hona chahiye kitna? Around 200, 250 ppm is what we need in the atmosphere. How much we have? We have almost more than 480 ppm, touching 500 now. So you have got enhanced carbon dioxide in this. Okay, enhanced carbon dioxide, we have got carbon fertilization. Okay, and because of this, right down, we have got carbon fertilization. Matlab kya hai? We have got a faster growth of forests and plants, more green. Okay, carbon fertilization is rapid uptake of nitrates. It leads to rapid uptake of nitrates. And long term, the soils are nitrate poor. Long term, the soils become nitrate poor. And that leads to poor growth of plants, grasses, and agriculture. Poor growth of plants, poor growth of grasses, and poor growth of agriculture. Okay, तो sequence लिखेंगे. Enhanced CO2 levels. This leads to carbon fertilization. This leads to a higher uptake of nitrates. Okay, this leads to a poor nitrate composition in soils, and this leads to poor plant growth, compromised productivity in agriculture. और enhanced CO2 क्यों है? Because of carbon emissions, because of deforestation. This is how the whole thing operates. Not that I know of, Eva. I do not know how this operates. Kya relationship you're asking me? Can more N2 emissions match it up? I don't know. Okay, not in our scales. इतना याद रखो. Carbon emissions, enhanced CO2, carbon fertilization, more uptake of nitrates, poor nitrates in the soils, and poor growth of plants, and falling productivity of agriculture. That's why it is a cyclic thing. Okay? It's like, I take more drugs, I feel energetic, I work more, I get tired more. Then I take more drugs. That's how your tolerance level keeps on increasing. Okay, typical जो body में होता है endorphin effect होता है. Okay, so more this ultimately will result in collapse. It's like a positive feedback that leads to collapse finally. ठीक है, all done here? Fine. Now some facts लिखो आप लोग, all of you. Some names. 1, 2, 3, 4. The first is, what are the nitrogen fixing bacteria? What are the nitrogen fixing bacteria? Azotobacter and rhizobium. Azotobacter and rhizobium. These two are the nitrogen fixing bacteria, part of fixation. Next is, what are the ammonifying bacteria? What are the ammonifying bacteria? Clostridium. And a generic, okay, bacillus. what are what are the ammonification bacteria? Clostridium, Clostridium, and Bacillus. What are the nitrifying bacteria? ये सारा bacteria करते हैं. What are the nitrifying bacteria? Nitrosomonas, okay, and nitrobacter, They are nitrifying bacteria, converts into nitrates. What are the assimilatory bacteria? Nitrosomonas, Nitrosomonas, Nitrosomonas and nitrobacter. Then what are the assimilatory bacteria that assimilate? There again azotobacter and azotobacter and Clostridium, Clostri, and Clostridium. They are the assimilation bacteria. Next, what are the denitrification bacteria? What are the denitrification bacteria? Pseudomonas, Pseudomonas for denitrification. Okay, so it's like, nitrification is Nitrosomonas and denitrification is Pseudomonas. Okay, Pseudomonas and Paracoccus and Paracoccus, the denitrification bacteria, Pseudomonas and Paracoccus. And what are the ammonium producing bacteria? Some bacteria also produce ammonium. What are the ammonium producing bacteria? They are Nitrosomonas, and Nitrococcus. Nitrosomonas and Nitrococcus. These are multiple choice questions. What type of? So most of you may have heard about Azotobacter and Rhizobiums. Okay, these two things. The पहला वाला लिखा मैंने. The Azotobacter and Rhizobium जो है, they are found in the roots of plants. They are found with legumes. They're a very important part of organic farming. Yes, legumes में, root of plants में, okay. They're part of organic farming. ठीक है, all done? Okay, so that's nitrogen cycle. Okay, the next is, let's do a bit on phosphorus cycle. Take a fresh page. Phosphorus cycle. Okay, now there is, first listen to this. If you look at all these cycles, nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, or sulfur cycle, or even hydrological cycle, okay, all these cycles में, a very important component of cycle is, there is an atmospheric part. Okay, there is a gaseous part to all the cycles, except for the phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus cycle ka, there is not a significant atmospheric part. Although there is some gas also released in the form of phosphorus, but that is not the main one. That is why the phosphorus cycle is an example of a sedimentary cycle. It's an example of sedimentary cycle. Because phosphorus cycle ka, there is not much relevant atmospheric component. So, which of the following cycles has or is a sedimentary cycle? Answer is phosphorus cycle. So, phosphorus cycle is all about phosphorus in the rocks, weathering of the rocks, the sediments into the soil, the plants absorbing, the plants dying, again phosphorus gets mixed. Okay. So, phosphorus moves within the land itself. It does not have a component of the atmosphere. That's a very important point. Okay. There is no atmosphere, there's no significant atmospheric component. In fact, I wrote that point down. If you can mention this point here, down, that phosphorus, put a star mark, write down. Phosphorus and phosphorus-based material, phosphorus and phosphorus-based material do not enter gaseous phases easily. Phosphorus and phosphorus-based material, they do not enter the gaseous phases easily. Okay. The main source of gaseous phosphorus, the main source of gaseous phosphorus is phosphine, PHOS. The main source of gaseous phosphorus is phosphine, PHOS, PHINE is phosphine. That is produced in special conditions alone. That's produced in special conditions alone. Okay? So this is one fact you should know. ये phosphorus cycle का gaseous part है नहीं या फिर relevant नहीं. That's one. Second, why did we need nitrogen? Nitrogen was important part of proteins and building blocks. Nitrogen important for the growth. Okay, good nitrogen, the leaves will be rich and green and healthy. Why do we need phosphorus? Phosphorus is a very important component of ATP. ATP, understand? Energy release hota hai body mein. Okay, yes. So with ATP, it plays a very important role in the energy release. Okay, what is the importance of phosphorus? Phosphorus is part of ATP, one part of our mitochondria, जिसमें कि energy release होता है. So with phosphorus you can do more work. One. Number two, phosphorus is a very important part of DNA. So genetic coding, genetic जो chromosomes हैं, okay, again you need good phosphorus content. Lack of phosphorus can create genetic disorders. Okay. And third is, it's also a very important part of RNA. And RNA plays a very important role in protein formation. So three important roles of phosphorus. In energy release, in the coding formation of the genetic material DNA में, and in the RNA, which is important for protein formation. So agar phosphorus nahi hai, the nitrogen will not convert into proteins effectively. Okay? But you can put a star mark. Compared to nitrogen, phosphate requirements are far lesser. These are far lesser. Okay. Next slide down. Source of phosphorus is both organic material, like dead and decaying life forms, and organic waste. So organic waste में बहुत phosphate होता है. Source of phosphorus क्या है? The source of phosphorus is dead and decaying life forms. It also includes the organic waste, sewage waste. And the second source of phosphorus is rocks. One type of rock called as apatites. These are very rich in phosphorus. The source is apatite, rocks, and the life form remains. Next slide down. Phosphorus in the soil. Phosphorus in the soil is absorbed by plants. Aided by fungi called as mycorrhizae. MYCORR. Mycorrhizae. MYCORRHIZAE is one type of a fungi. So the absorption in case of nitrogen is done by bacteria. The absorption of phosphorus is done by fungi, not bacteria. Okay? So I do not know if you can see this one or not. Let me try, otherwise so मैं बना ही लेता हूँ because it's too light. So phosphorus cycle दिखने में कैसा है? We have got rocks का a weathering, it goes into oceans, ocean से algae, from the algae we have got seabirds. Seabirds, we have guano. From the guano, it enters the soils. From the rocks, weathering in the soils. From the soils, absorbed by plants. और ये absorption में we have the role of mycorrhizae. Fungi, it absorbs, then this is eaten by animals, and plants can die. Animals can die. This is decomposers. So this is the component of, or this is the phosphorus cycle. So rocks are the main source. Example of rock rich in phosphorus is, I said, apatites. Yes. ये वाला absorbed by plants, uptake by plants, absorbed by plants. Absorbed by plants, uptake by plants. So this is phosphorus in the plants, this is phosphorus in the animals. Guano, this is a bird called as, bird droppings called as guano. Arrow marks, ये एरो मार्क ऐसा है, सॉइल से आ रहा है. This is entering the soil. A weathering from oceans, algae, seabirds. Yes. This fungi, which helps absorption. One type of fungi. So plants can't absorb अगर ये fungi नहीं है तो. The fungi will absorb and then the plants eat. Above rocks, one type of a rock called as apatite. Apatites. Yes, guano droppings. Okay, the guano waste. Guanos are the waste. The seabirds, they eat the fishes. Okay, algae are eaten by the fish. The fish eaten by seabirds. And the waste of the seabird is called as the guano. Okay, so that feeds the soil. Not just Galapagos, this is a phenomena of many places along the coast of Peru. Weathering. Weathering means breakdown of the rocks. ये भी weathering है, ये भी weathering है. Breakdown of the rocks. Okay. Now 2 points here. Now how does man impact the phosphorus cycle? 2 points. 2 points. Number one. Okay. Extensive mining of phosphorus rocks. Extensive mining of phosphorus rocks has released more phosphorus from its parent sinks. It has released more phosphorus from its parent sink. Okay, ये जो rocks हैं आप mine कर रहे हो. Okay, it's almost like an exhaustible resource. तो हमारे rocks के phosphorus are getting over. Okay, the guano bird accumulations are getting over. So we are doing that. One. Number two, parent source. Okay, जो source है वो ultimately sinks भी है, वहीं तो ultimately इकट्ठा होता है ना. ठीक है, fine. Parent source, no problem. Number two, over application of phosphorus results in more runoff of the phosphorus. So phosphorus क्या होता है? Phosphorus is not easily absorbed by water in the soils. आप ज़्यादा डालोगे, the phosphorus will run off. Okay, वो store नहीं रहेगा. Okay, this results in accumulation of phosphorus. In the aquatic systems. Okay. Causing eutrophication. Okay, so you wrote this term, eutrophication. Third point, more urban and human sewage waste. Also accumulates in water bodies, rivers, lakes and coasts. Water bodies in rivers, lakes and coasts. Again causing eutrophication. Okay. So what a man is doing is, man is removing phosphorus from here, and ultimately the phosphorus ends up more in the water bodies than as useful amount in the soils. So loss of phosphorus resource and accumulation at the level of toxin levels in the water. Okay, so human activities have quickened, it's faster, have quickened the phosphorus cycle and its depletion. They have quickened the phosphorus cycle and its depletion. ये तो आराम से वेदरिंग होता, इधर से आता, आपने माइनिंग किया, जल्दी अप्लाई कर दिया. Okay, the process has become fast, and ultimately you are depleting the system of the phosphorus. So I've discussed the impact of nitrogen cycle disruption. I've discussed the impact of phosphorus cycle disruption. So I can see these two are the most important cycles that you must know as a part of ecosystem. Okay? Okay. So I'm done with this part here. Achha, one fact you may write down more as a multiple choice wala, that phosphorus cycle primarily operates as, the phosphorus cycle primarily operates as movement of orthophosphate compounds. It operates as movement of orthophosphate compounds. Essentially, okay, this is orthophosphate radicals, PO4 3-. So when we study phosphorus cycle, we're studying how does the compound which has this radical is moving through the systems, studied as movement of orthophosphate compounds, which is PO4, phosphate radical 3-. That's a fact that you should know. Okay, so I've done 3 concepts. One is what is ecological niche, what is nitrogen cycle, and what is phosphorus cycle. Okay. The next one, take a fresh page, next term, a bit of discussion on what is biomagnification and what is bioaccumulation. What is biomagnification? What is bioaccumulation? They're not the same things, they're a bit different. Okay? Again, I am picking up topics which are related to some current affair discussions. And this is a very big issue in how animals are impacted, health problems in man, problems of extinctions, bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation. Okay. So, sun lo pehle, what happens is, we have, let's assume a very simple food chain where we have, okay, small life forms. These life forms are eaten by slightly bigger life forms. These are eaten by a bit more bigger life form, and this is eaten by the largest life form. This is probably at the producer's level, maybe herbivore level, carnivore 1, carnivore 2. Okay? And say there is some material in the soil, okay, or in the ecosystem, which probably is toxic. Mercury hai, cadmium hai, okay, arsenic hai, they are poisonous. So these life forms, okay, say they pick up a very small amount, say 0.0000 some micron, they have taken up. Okay, 0.00 micron taken up. So from here, what happens is, when more of is eaten, this 0.0001 micron accumulates as maybe 0.001 micron. Okay. then this life form eats many of this. Okay, so 0.0001 micron से अब यहाँ पर पहुंच जाता है maybe 1 micron. Okay, so when some toxic material, while moving through the food chain, starts building up in amount and gets, okay, magnified at some level, it's called as biomagnification. Say arsenic or mercury or cadmium, okay, they are very small traces. ऐसे देखने में, okay, this is not much, very, very small, not really harmful that ways. But by the time they start moving through the life forms, in some stage, it is so much that now the life form gets impacted. Again, if this food is ultimately eaten by human beings, then you build up very toxic levels of those pollutants. What we realized is, okay, the way we are dumping waste, the way we discharge chemicals, industrial effluents, water mein, soil mein, ultimately all of that finds itself in life forms and even in the human, okay, guts, human organ systems. Okay. The question is, कि होता क्यों है? Why it happens? Because these toxic material, okay, they generally are not soluble in water. So when something is not soluble in water, okay, they cannot be removed by excretions. So they are not soluble in water. We call those as hydrophobic substances. But they are soluble in fat. They are lipophilic. Okay, so while moving through the body, okay, otherwise what happens is you eat something, excretion urine mein nikal jana chahiye. But these are not soluble in water, they are soluble in fat, and fat can get stored. Okay, so they are lipophilic substances. And by time they are stored here, eaten by this, stored here, eaten by this, stored here, eaten by this. Now the guts, the stomach, the body fats, it has huge amount of those toxins. That's what is called as biomagnification. When I study the biomagnification to the entire trophic levels, I call as this. But when I study how it operates at any one level, इस level में कैसे बढ़ रहा है, I call that as bioaccumulation. So biomagnification is how the toxic material moves through all the trophic structures and accumulates somewhere. But when I'm studying only one level, I call that as bioaccumulation. Our concern, of course, is both. Yes, absolutely. Okay, cyanide fishing, mercury, I said cadmium pollution. Very important is DDT. DDT is one of those chemicals, pesticides, which is almost insoluble in water. And they are highly lipophilic. So they end up in animals, they end up in human beings, and they have impacts. Okay? You got the mechanism, all of you? I'll put some technical terms to get ready for the questions. Anil Mehta. बहुत देर से बैठा हूं, ब्रेक दे दीजिए वरना ओके बेटा फोन लेके जाओ या लैपटॉप लेके जाओ. Don't have magnification of yeah, mercury pollution, anamika, correct. Do you want a 2 minutes break? 2 minutes break. Go. अब पानी पी के मत आना. Okay, fine. I'm sitting here. If you have some doubts, ask me. Or take your 2-3 minutes break. Uttam sir used to give break. Uttam sir महान इंसान है. Okay. देवता आदमी है, देवता. आपका पाला पड़ा है अब दानव से.
Nitrous sulfide directly impacts global warming. It will not directly impact. It will make carbon.
It will have secondary pollutants, smogs, and the impact. Some of the nitrogen compounds, जैसे NO है, Guys, my suggestion to you, okay? There are only two things you can do. One is you study, okay? Second is आप नेतागिरी करो. ये जो WhatsApp ग्रुप बनाते हो is totally useless unless 2 years down the line you want to have a small group and start your own institute. ठीक है? There are zillions of groups. So purely the only way of making notes is be attentive in the class. And अगर group join ही करना है, join a proper group officially managed by some team. You guys don't make a group अपने आप. Okay, ये देखता हूं और ये सब जोशीला वाला काम है. 2 दिन रहेगा ग्रुप में, हेलो हाय गुड मॉर्निंग, बक अप गाइस, लेट अस स्टडी. थर्ड डे अबे चुप कर सो जा, मैं भी सो रहा हूं. ठीक है, ये ड्रामा बेटा मैंने 20 साल देखा है. Don't join any group like that. At best, have 1 or 2 friends if you can. Otherwise, walk alone. So the group I was talking about is the Telegram group of Edukemy, where I am posting the articles. Okay, so you can type Geography Edukemy. एक मिनट बच्चे. So Telegram group जो है, it is Shabbir Edukemy, Geography and Environment for IAS. Yes. Because soil में nutrients कम है. Soil में कम है तो plants मिल नहीं रहा है. तो excessive हर जगह थोड़ी हो रहा है. वाटर में एक्सेस है, इधर कम है. Okay. Net effect is what I need as nitrogen for the plants, वो कम है. ठीक है? Anisha, join your college first. Okay? I can only suggest. Others you'll discover in 1, 2, 3 attempts, hopefully. Okay? Otherwise, whatever you can do. Okay, let's start off. The class starts now. Every new batch, there are certain Joshiles in the class. Okay, you start a group or फिर you become a political party. Soham, it is not there for everybody. There are some in the geography sessions we are doing. Okay, they must be part of live sessions. For part of GS course, you get all the recordings and the notes. बाकी सब manage करो. Okay, मेहरबानी ऐसा ही होता है. Okay, write down. Biomagnification. Biomagnification. Okay, write down. It is a process in the increase in the concentration of, it's the process in the increase in the concentration of certain metals, comma, some chemicals like pesticides, which are harmful and toxic, in the tissues and organs of life forms. Certain metals, certain substances, chemicals like pesticides, which are harmful, which are toxic, in the tissues and organs of life forms at successively higher levels. In the food chains. in the food chains. Okay, what I'm saying is there is increase. ये 3-4 point है. There's increase in concentration. The increase is successively more in the higher levels of the food chain. So ये important part है. Okay, it is a process. It is a process in the concentration of some material, of some metals, of some chemicals. Okay, where in the organs, in the tissues of life forms, okay, in the successive higher levels of the food chains. So ये level 1 है, ये level 2 है, ये level 3 है. The amount here is maybe 0.0001, here it is 0.001, here it is 0.01, and so on. So as you go up the food chain, it becomes more and more, okay, in concentration. That's because, see, ये important word है. You must understand the word called as magnification क्या है. Magnification is the concentration increases in the successive levels of the trophic structure of an ecosystem. Right, next. Biomagnification. Biomagnification is one of the major ecological problems. Is one of the major ecological problems that impacts marine organisms, aquatic life forms, marine organisms, aquatic life forms, birds, terrestrial animals, and also human beings. Right, next. Dying vultures that fed on the carcass of dying vultures feeding on the dead bodies or the carcass of cattle, dead bodies of cows, buffaloes. Okay, yeah, they're feeding and they were dying because there was bioaccumulation of diclofenac. There is biomagnification of diclofenac. Diclofenac क्या है? It's a painkiller. Even we use it. Now those painkillers like Wolverine and the rest, this is a painkiller. So diclofenac has been used in cattle. Okay, वो small amount में होता है. But when the vultures eat, okay, the cattle 1 say diclofenac, cattle 2 say diclofenac, cattle 3 say diclofenac, and it biomagnifies in the vultures. ये बहुत न्यूज़ में रहा है. Okay. Similarly, okay, bioaccumulation of mercury, okay, comma, pesticides has impacted birds and human life. Okay, a brief idea, what is it? Next slide down. Okay, bioaccumulation happens for substances. Bioaccumulation happens for substances which have very low biodilution, because they are insoluble in water. Because we call those as hydrophobics. They are hydrophobic, insoluble water, and they are lipophilic. Means they are soluble in fat and they can accumulate in the fat. They're hydrophobic and they are lipophilic. Lipophilic का मतलब है, lipo means fats, fatty acids, fats. So they are soluble in fats and they accumulate in fatty tissues. They accumulate in the fatty tissues. Within bracket, write down. Okay. Water soluble substances are relatively easy to be removed through excretion. Are easy to be removed in excretion. Either in excreta or in urine, they get removed. But hydrophobic substances, they accumulate. Hydrophobic substances can accumulate in the bodies. In the bodies. Online, Kanika, you cannot hear me. You have also got Rocket Singh. मेरी आवाज आ रही है? It's almost like I'm speaking from moon types. Yes, some of you can hear me. Okay, fine. So it could be a local problem in that case. Just wait, it could be buffering because of connectivity, it should be fine. Okay, get back. Some of the common metals that undergo biomagnification are mercury, arsenic and cadmium. Mercury, arsenic and cadmium. Next, write down. Novel organic substances, NOVEL, novel organic substances are one of the most likely for biomagnification. Are one of the most likely in biomagnification. Achha. Novel organic substance, NOVEL. Now see, what happens is, certain type of chemicals, and most of these are chlorine chemicals. Some chemicals, they are not found naturally in the ecosystems in large amount. So the body is not adapted to manage it. See, human body ho, life forms are highly efficient systems. Now we have antibodies in us, we can fight viruses, we can fight bacteria. But अगर कोई नया आ जाता है, our body is not trained to manage it, so it can't remove it. So those type of substances, which are new substances or found not much in nature, but आपने add कर दिया है. So the body is not trained to manage it. We call those as novel का मतलब है नया, novel organic substances. So these substances, they generally are chlorine compounds, okay, and they start accumulating. Write down. Most of इसको NOS बोलते हैं, novel organic substance. Most of NOS, okay, are not abundantly found and are not easily degraded. Are not abundantly found and are not easily degraded. And because organisms do not have regular exposure, to such chemicals, they are not adapted. And they are not evolved in detoxifying themselves from such chemicals. They are not adapted and they are not evolved in detoxifying themselves from these chemicals. Okay, so I'm telling you कि ये क्या substances हैं? What substances are prone to biomagnification? One, I said there are some metals. Metals, I said, like mercury, arsenic, and I said cadmium. Okay, these are susceptible ones. Second, and these are largely industrial chemicals, heavy metals हैं, industrial वाले हैं. Second, I said, we have got novel organic substances. These substances are actually organochlorines. NOS, they are organochlorines. Now, these are not normally found in the nature. So, body का training नहीं हुआ है to remove it. ठीक है? So, what are the examples of NOS? Take a list. The examples of NOS क्या क्या हैं? It is, one is DDT. One is DDT. Second is hexachlorobenzene. Hexachlorobenzene. HCBs. Okay. Then we have one toxaphene. TOXAPHENE. DDT, HCB, toxaphenes, monomethyl mercury. ये सबसे खतरनाक है. Monomethyl mercury. This is highly toxic and can be retained very easily. Okay, this one. Then we have PCBs. PCB is polychlorinated biphenyls. Monomethyl mercury. This is polychlorinated biphenyl. PCBs. Some examples of NOS. Okay, DDT. Okay, HCBs, toxaphene, monomethyl mercury, and PCBs. Okay, now these, because ये आराम से निकलते नहीं हैं, we also call this as persistent organic pollutants भी बोलते हैं. They're also called as, no, not forever chemicals. Forever chemicals are those that do not get degraded. वो अलग चीज है. Like plastics are examples of forever chemicals. वो degrade नहीं होंगे. These are those which get trapped in the body. They are called as persistent organic pollutants, POP. ये सारे न्यूज में चल रहे हैं. We have some rulings, we have some global treaties on persistent pollutants and also forever pollutants. Okay, so these are the examples of novel organic substances which can cause. Okay, and of course, third I mentioned बहुत common is the diclofenac. Diclofenac are painkillers which impacted the vultures. Diclofenac. POP full form is persistent organic pollutants. Persistent organic pollutants. ठीक है? Okay, right next. Now I have explained what is biomagnification. Now next is what is bioaccumulation. Write down. Bioaccumulation is a special type of biomagnification. It is a special type of biomagnification that happens within the same trophic level. That happens within the same trophic level. ठीक है? So अगर आप किसी एक लेवल को पढ़ रहे हो, so when you study the entire sequence of how it has traveled So if you study the entire sequence, this eaten by this eaten by this, if you study the whole sequence, I call this a biomagnification. If you're studying only one particular one, यहाँ पर कितना चल रहा है, it's called as bioaccumulation. Yeah, DDT is one type of pesticide. Yes, even endosulfan, correct. Jayesh, DDT and endosulfan, both are capable of biomagnifications. All fine here? So what is biomagnification and what is the reason why we have it? Okay. Next, write down. So I'm done with this one. Now, one small discussion on ecosystems stability. A short write-up. I'm done with this topic. The next topic is ecosystems stability. So I said one of the most important properties of ecosystem is it is capable of self-regulation. So self-regulation, self-balance, also called as homeostasis, is a very important feature of homeostasis, H-O-M-E-O-S-T-A-S-I-S. Homeostasis is one of the very important features of ecosystem. Okay. The self-regulation is part of maintaining species populations. It is part of efficient biogeochemical cycles. Okay. The ecosystem is well balanced, then the population of species will be maintained. 2 tigers, 10 deers, maybe 5 acres of grasses, some supporting bacteria, ये balance maintained रहेगा. So the homeostasis is part of maintaining the species population. It's part of efficient biogeochemical cycles. It's a part of ecosystems' ability to regenerate itself. It's part of ecosystem's ability to regenerate itself. Okay, if it is impacted, it can bounce back, okay, and again become efficient. Okay, now how it happens? ये होता कैसे? How does the ecosystem balance itself? So primarily, okay, it does this by a complex of food webs. Okay, how does the ecosystem maintain its balance? Okay, by having complex food webs, by having multiple pathways for energy flow. How does it maintain? By complex food webs and by having multiple pathways of energy flow. So example I give students is, imagine there is a life form called A feeds B, B feeds C, C feeds D. If for some reason C dies, then okay, D also will die. If for some reason B dies, then C will die and also D will die. So linear food chains are very unstable. Okay, so the smart thing is ecosystems have A feeds on B, feeds on F, feeds on G, B feeds on X, G also feeds on X, F feeds on Y, Y probably feeds on A. It's a complex one. इसमें अगर एक life form चला भी गया, The other links will maintain the ecosystem. Typically think of, if I have only one source of income, I am vulnerable. But if I have a salary, I might have some rentals, I have some savings, I have friends who can help me, then I am more stable. Okay, so this complex web, okay, is part of the energy pathways. जितने ज़्यादा pathways होंगे, उतना ज़्यादा stable system होगा. ठीक है? An ecosystem maintains itself primarily by this. And this is essentially what? When I'm saying pathways, it essentially means, okay, there is diversity of abiotic conditions plus there is diversity of biotic, okay, components. Jitna zyada variety hoga, okay, the more amount of life forms, the more amount of factors which work in ecosystem. So how an ecosystem maintains balance is primarily by the diversity, the variations. Okay, so if you look at agriculture, में क्या problem होता है? Agriculture is a simplified ecosystem. You removed all plants as weeds, you removed all animals, insects as pests, and you grow only one type of a crop, maybe rice or wheat. Agar ek halka sa you have got some infection, the entire rice can get wiped out. One small water problem, the entire wheat can get wiped out. So what happens is agriculture is example of modified, is example of externally managed ecosystem. ये भी ecosystem ही है, but ये managed है. Man is managing it. It's a modified ecosystem. It is an externally managed ecosystem. Agriculture is a simplified ecosystem. Agriculture में बस एक ही consumer है, man. All herbivores removed, all carnivores removed. Man is a sole herbivore, man is a sole carnivore. So it's a simplified system. That's what makes agriculture very, very vulnerable. और जितना ज़्यादा आपका managed है by fertilizers, जितना ज़्यादा managed है, okay, by artificial systems, this will become a bigger problem. So I repeat, a very important feature of ecosystem is that it has homeostasis. Ecosystems are self-repairing. Ecosystems are self-managed systems. And it happens primarily because of diversity. Jitna variety hoga, utna better. Okay, and from there I said agriculture is one area which is a simplified and an unstable ecosystem. Fine. Now in the ecosystem stability, a very important mechanism is something called as a feedback loop. Some of you know this. Feedback loops क्या होते हैं? They are like controlling systems. Say if I am running very fast, my body sends a message, slow down. If I am very slow, something builds up like a guilt, start working fast. Okay. If I'm exerting myself, my body starts reacting and my muscles will start slowing down. So every ecosystem, every natural system has systems of control. So feedback loops are essentially, they are forms of control. It's like a messaging which can control certain things. Okay? So in ecosystems, the feedback loops hote hain, they're always what we call as negative feedbacks. They're always negative feedbacks. What are negative feedbacks? Whatever is happening, the negative feedback will do the opposite. If I'm running very fast, the negative feedback will slow me down. If I'm running very slow, the negative feedback will make me faster. Okay. Because if I'm running fast and the body says run more fast, I'll collapse. If I'm going slow, the body says go more slow, I'll again fall asleep. Okay. Balance कब होगा? आपको maintain करना है. If becoming fast, become slow. If becoming slow, you become fast. Okay. So always, as a rule, the stability of ecosystems is a consequence of negative feedback loops. These are those multiple choice questions. Okay. What does feedback do? How does ecosystems feedback operate? And so on. Write down. Now I'm relating with the ecosystems. You remember the keystone species? Exactly, that's what they're doing. Keystone species operate as negative feedback loops. You know, keystone species, they operate as negative feedback loops. So if there are more deers, okay, or Kaskar, this is operating for the keystone species which are apex predators. They also operate in case of herbivores. Okay? So apex predator, if there are more deers, it's like there are more grasses, there are more deers, okay, and if the deers keep on growing, okay, the ecosystem will collapse. So there are more grass, there is more deer, the grasses become less, okay. Maybe the tigers start eating the deers, the deer become less, again that grasses grow back. So what do elephants do in savanna ecosystems? When elephants, they walk, they run, okay, they uproot the type of plants called as acacia. Acacia Hindi में बोलते हैं baboon, the thorn वाले होते हैं. If elephants are not there, okay, the grasslands can also have trees. The acacias can grow very fast. Then grasses nahi rahega. So when the elephants are there, they pull out the acacias and they keep the ecosystem like a grassland. Okay, write down this point here. That apex carnivores control the deer populations. Apex carnivores control deer population. Okay. Similarly, elephants uproot and feed on acacia bushes and trees. They uproot and they feed on acacia bushes and acacia trees, allowing for the grassland's character to be maintained. Allowing for the grassland's character to be maintained. Okay? So there are two more concepts. We'll continue on Monday, no issues. So I know today's class was a lot of details of some concepts. Maybe you have heard these terms. You know what biomagnification is? Maybe I helped you with the idea called as POPs. You know what nitrogen cycle is? I gave you some terms of the bacteria and so on. So revise this, make your summaries. Monday, tomorrow, Sunday, we have a day off. Yeah, GS we don't have on Sundays. And yesterday you had your economy, current affairs. On Saturdays, again open sessions. Today we will have your reading sessions. Last week we had some reading sessions of 3-4 articles. Today also we'll have the reading sessions. Again start at 3:30. Okay? So articles I'll provide you. We'll share that on the links. At 3:30 you can join me for reading sessions. Okay then. Bye-bye all of you. पूछ लेंगे, let you know. Yes, बता देते.